So this is something I've wanted to make for quite a while, and I think it's about time that I actually make it now that I have the time for it. For those of you who do not know, I go by Schnee1 on the Versus Battle Wiki. People who have followed my channel previously don't actually know this, because I've never actually mentioned it up until now. But this was something I wanted to make for quite a while. And, as you read by the title, obviously, it's my personal thoughts on what I think the next Infamous game should be. And before I go into detail on that, here's a little bit of context. Now, for those of you who are unaware, the next Infamous game after Infamous 2 was not supposed to be Second Son. It was in fact supposed to be the evil ending of Infamous 2. Originally, it was supposed to be the good ending of Infamous 1 is canon, which it still is, and then the evil ending of Infamous 2 becomes canon, which it should have been. Yes, you heard me, should have been. Now, I don't mind Second Son. I really don't. Gameplay-wise, it's a good game overall. And I don't have... I shouldn't say I absolutely despise the story of this game, but to say it wasn't good would be a bit of an understatement. It's nothing that makes me want to throw my fist at it and want to just end my life over how bad the story is. That's an exaggeration, obviously. But let's just say it's not as bad as, say, modern Star Wars, but it's definitely not the best story in the world, and it does kind of insult the legacy of Infamous 1 and 2 a little bit, especially in regards to the Cole's Legacy DLC. But that's for another topic for another day. Either way, I can give further context on why that was going to be the game set after Infamous 2 instead of Second Son, if people wishes for more. Maybe I'll put some links in the description later regarding what the devs and writers have said regarding what they want to do with the next Infamous game. But either way, I do think that there is potential in another Infamous game. However, I don't think that it can be in Second Son. Now, listen. Infamous Second Son, the good ending at least, ended off in a pretty good manner overall. Humans and conduits are able to live peacefully amongst one another, and it has a pretty solid ending for Delsin Rowe, despite how much I hate him as a character. So, I don't think there's really anywhere they could go with a storyline centered around after the ending of Infamous Second Son. And the evil ending is just so silly, honestly. I really don't see any way they could add to the story of that ending either. It's either the world is fully at peace between humans and conduits and nothing bad will really happen unless a complete asspull comes out, or you have the evil ending, which pretty much the same thing, only now Delsin Rowe is even more unlikable than he already is. And I don't really care about either one of those. So this time, I want to go with the original route. Infamous 3 should be set after the evil ending of Infamous 2. It should be Cole, along with the rest of the conduits, Lucy Quo, and maybe some other conduits that they meet along the way, and them trying to create as many conduits as possible in order to stop the plague, with the rest of the world fighting them as a result. Now, there are multiple reasons for this, outside of, not having to just reboot the series and set up a bunch of new characters that we don't care about, like Second Son did. First things first is the obvious one, Cole McGrath. Now, listen, for as much of the shit that Cole McGrath gets, that being him having a terrible voice actor in Infamous 1, yeah, I'm sorry, Jason Cottle, I like you, but jeez, you weren't that good. Either way, yeah, Infamous 1, yeah, Cole didn't have a particularly good voice actor, and he came across as very monotone and rather boring in his speech pattern and delivery, which is part of the reason why he was given so much flack and why he was considered very boring by the community. And I can totally understand where they are coming from with this. However, this also causes them to severely underestimate just how well written Cole actually is in actuality. The idea behind a person who was given superpowers sounds like a dream come true, but then you realize just how big of a burden it actually is. And from the very start of that game, just goes to show just how bad having superpowers actually is in a city that wants you fucking dead. And then Cole's development and growth into becoming a hero, as well as his backstory explained in the comics, which I think should have been in the main game, but whatever. All in all, I think Cole's actually a very well-rounded character, and especially by the time of Infamous 2, where he has, 1, an actually good voice actor, and 2, is actually rather funny and enjoyable, on top of having all the growth and development built up from Infamous 1. He's just a much better character all around than Delsin was, who was pretty much nothing but an edgelord who just kind of does things for the sake of doing things, especially in the evil route. But either way, so yeah, Cole is a much better character than Delsin, for reasons that have been explained thousands of times that I really can't go into any more detail over. But on top of this, okay, let me actually go into detail about another thing. The karmic system. And this is where my opinion is going to get rather unpopular. So the karmic system, they either need to ditch it or do a severe reworking, because it just doesn't work. Now, it was fine back in Infamous 1, because Cole had a reason for doing good. One, because it was the right thing to do, and 2, he wanted to get out of the city, and he wanted to impress his girlfriend Trish. In the evil route of that game as well, it makes sense for why he wants to be evil. He does these good things because he's told to, and yet the city still hates him and throws rocks at him for it. It makes sense in both ways. But it also makes sense in the morally gray way, where he does occasionally lash out against the city for constantly treating him like shit over something he didn't do, despite all the good things he's doing for it, and yet he still wishes for the city to be better as a result. Unfortunately, none of the Infamous games are really allowed to go into this level of the morally gray area. They never even touch this area, especially during the ending of Infamous 2, where in order to do the evil ending, you would have to build up evil karma as a result. Now, the thing is, good Cole McGrath at the end of Infamous 2, it wouldn't be completely out of character for him to make the quote-unquote evil decision at the end of that game. Because the decision to not risk literally all of humanity and guarantee to save what little there is makes sense, even for good guy Cole. And yet, the game just simply doesn't allow this decision. In order to make a rather logical, morally gray ending, you have to be an asshole throughout the entire game. That means killing civilians, being very selfish, killing protesters, everything like that. Non-violent protesters, I should say. Either way, it just didn't make sense within that game, and it's why I really didn't like the... As much as I love the ending of Infamous 2, I don't like the path trying to get there. It just didn't make sense for Cole's character. I would have liked it to giving the player to simply choose which ending they wanted at the end of the game, as opposed to having to go through a karmic system in order to get it. Like, what if Cole tried to do good things throughout the entire game and was in good karma, but he still chose the evil ending? It makes sense. It isn't completely ridiculous for this to happen. And yet, the game just isn't allowed to do so. So, like I said, allow the games to walk this morally gray line. And if you can't fix the karma system into doing that, into making it work, just get rid of it altogether. And yes, I know it's pretty much a staple of the series, but honestly, the games are still good, and the story is still good, with or without the karmic system. It needs a severe reworking, or just needs to be scrapped altogether. At least in my opinion. If I do see arguments regarding just fixing the karmic system, then I can definitely see why they want to keep it. But I think everyone can agree it does need a reworking at the absolute least. Now, the third thing is that... Now, going into detail about what I would want from Infamous 3, first off, just keep the gameplay the way it is, okay? The gameplay of Infamous 1 and 2 was perfectly fine. It was fluid, it gave you so many different options, it gave you so many different things for you to do, and how to upgrade your lightning abilities, despite you having multiple different conduit powers within Infamous Second Son. None of them are anywhere near as detailed or interesting as the thousands upon thousands of things you could have done with Cole's abilities, both in Infamous 1 and in Infamous 2. Especially depending on which powers you got from either from the good path or the evil path. Oh yeah, did I mention you actually got different abilities depending on which karmic path you chose in Infamous 1 and 2? Yeah. What exactly did they do with that, game? What exactly did you do with that? Although this is First Light, which I think is significantly better than Second Son. But whatever. Now... Right, there was one other thing I wanted to go into detail with. Ah, yes. Have something to do with the... Have something go against Cole McGrath within Infamous 2. Have some sort of antagonist who tries to make the argument that you should risk humanity as long as you save a massive majority. Have that argument be brought up against Cole. The same argument that was used against the good or evil path in Infamous 2 should be expanded upon and discussed within Infamous 3. And maybe that can lead into another ending where Cole can maybe, I don't know, for lack of a better example, maybe try the Rayfield inhibitor again, try the RFI, or some sort of different endings for the end of Infamous 3. And especially just make sure that they make sense for Cole's character no matter which one they do. Infamous 2 Evil just didn't make sense for Cole. Good or evil Infamous Second Son just didn't make sense for Delsin, mostly because that dude just didn't have any form of growth or development that made sense. Just... to summarize it, fix the karmic system to where you can walk that morally gray line. Have an interesting moral dilemma as a result of what happens at the end of Infamous 2. And if you do bring in more characters, we have plenty of development for Cole. We have a decent amount for Lucy. Expand on the side characters of the game. Expand on Lucy and expand on some of the other condos that you may introduce into the game. All of them, if you simply expand on them and have them interact with one another, you can have them be maybe not the most interesting characters, but at least likable to where they can carry along a solid story. But as I ended off right here, this is just a rant on Infamous as a whole. The karmic system, in my opinion, really screwed up the ending of the series. The karmic system forced people to have to choose either good or evil. We knew exactly what they were going to do, the good path in Infamous 2, and that ended up forcing Sucker Punch to change plans from Infamous 3 into Second Son, which they had significantly less plans for. It has far more potential than Second Son ended up having. Or maybe Second Son had a ton of potential, but they squandered it like butter. But it's just... Sucker Punch. If you do happen to watch this, and you didn't click off my absolutely horrid commentary, stick to your guns. Stick to what you planned. Stick to what you had in mind and what ideas that you have instead of switching them. Because otherwise, you're going to get a decent game with a story that just left a ton of fans, especially me, a rather mediocre taste in our mouths. Wow, context, Andrew. But either way, if you have the plans, stick to them. If you have your ideas, if you have a story set out, and you have the foundation, stick to it. We don't need another reboot. Another sequel may not be the most desired thing, but it's most definitely something that we need. For those of you who watch this and manage to stick through this and not die of boredom at my absolutely horrendous commentary, thanks a lot for sticking around. Feel free to give me your thoughts. Goodbye.